Coach, for starters, obviously pretty awesome weekend for Isaiah Sanders. Now he's getting some recognition, player of the week and whatnot. I mean, what was it about that game that just made it, I don't want to say the word easy, I know we don't like that word or any of that, but that really opened it up for him over the weekend?
Each game's different, and this week will be a completely different game. And, sometimes certain matchups unfold in different ways. And yet, the key is I think we went out and had a quality start to our week yesterday. And then certainly, the focus and the improvement that we have to make today at that position, in addition to each position that we have on our team.
What are some of the challenges of Boise State's defense from your first impression so far?
Yeah, just very physical, extremely athletic, a bunch of returning starters, guys that play the run well, superb on third down, outstanding defense. I think San Diego State had 9 first downs against them. That, you say that right there, and that's pretty stout. You look at the yardage differential when they're playing last week in the first half. You look at the yardage differential earlier in the year when they played a team from the American Conference. I mean, literally, I think it was 600 yards difference, which means your defense was outstanding, holding them to around 200 yards, and the offense was pretty good too when they were over 800 yards. So just across the board, just a complete deep. There's a reason why at the beginning of the year, and even you see it on film, what's been proven throughout the season, just what a fine squad they have.
And you mentioned the offense. What is it? I mean, obviously Brett Ripp is a good quarterback, but they've connected with, I think, something like 7 or 8 receivers every single game. What is it that gives them so many options that they're able to?
They run it well. They have 2 guys that get a good number of carries, and the one player has a bunch of home run carries. They're pretty creative in the way they use him. In addition to Madison, just a stout, downhill, good quickness, good in the box, yet still can break a run. And then you mention it. I mean, you just look at how many receivers they have that are already with double-digit catches on the year. And really, this isn't his first year of playing, Ripien, and it's not his second year of playing either. He's played. It's not his third year either. I mean, he's played a lot of football, and superb quarterback, a guy that'll play beyond this year too.
You mentioned after the game in Las Vegas the offensive line seemed to be improving or had a good game, played well. Why is that? Are they just developing through the season? Have you found the right combinations?
Probably a couple of those things. Yes, sir. I mean, I think that would be it. And yet there's an awful lot of growth that's still got to be made. I mean, just fundamentally, the initial step, being a little quicker off the football, knowing when you're working a combination block and when you're not, just because that changes your footwork and where you place your hands, and knowing the design of a play. I mean, I said we need to practice, and we just badly, and that's why even on a non-pad day, we love being in pads, and we're going to push whatever that's allowed. We believe that's best for a football player, best for the sport of football, and we trust the feedback that we get medically that way to help a guy not only improve, but we think there's a health measure that when you do it the right way, where you can be in pads a lot.
Are there any individuals within that group who are maybe grading more consistently higher than they were early in the season?
I don't know necessarily higher. I would say that he's been pretty solid. Has been Griffin Landrum at right guard, and you look at the tackles. At the other guard, Colin Marquez and Nolan Laufenberg gave us both solid performances. They were pretty much pretty close to even in terms of the number of snaps they had the other night. And we got to keep growing. We got to keep improving and developing.
And then you switched centers, at least who went out first. What was
You know, we did in the previous game. Vic dinged his knee a little bit and missed some work earlier in the week. And we're hoping this week and yet they both played. And we'll see who runs out there first this week. And I don't, Calhoun, I'm trying to think of if you're the 85 Lakers, you know, is Cooper not one of your 5 best players because he doesn't start, or if you're the 65 Celtics, is Havlicek not one of your 5 best players because he doesn't start? I mean, you're still going to see both those guys, both Chris Mitchell and Connor Vikapitz at center.
The rotation in general, and I know going into the opener, there's talked with 9 to 11 guys who are going to see some series.
Mm-hmm.
Is that number going down as the season goes on, or are the rotations at least taking on a different shape?
It changes week by week, and you really have. You've seen 11 guys out there. Not just in an initial series, but 11 different guys that have played in key situations in the third quarter of a game. And, we just, as we work throughout a year, we may use different rotations. We may go 3 series to 1 series. We may say one guy takes every snap at this spot. It's a dynamic. And, I think some of the pluses, and when guys are involved, they've earned that playing time come game day. And yet what we are going to do is we're going to take every guy and help them, their technique, and fundamentally, hopefully, help them make strides as a football player, especially as an offensive lineman.
And then on the defensive front, are you shifting looks a little more frequently this year than maybe you have in the past?
I think, I don't know if I said it in here. I mean, we did a complete, literally from scratch system overhaul this winter. And that was with our third down package, with 2-minute, with 4-minute. We just, as the game evolves and changes, I think you have to be, it's just something we really, really needed to do. And we did that defensively. And so that, to answer your question a roundabout way, yes.
And then it looks like some different personnel combinations now. The 2 nose guards getting in at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to accomplish in that?
Again, it's each game, it's probably a little bit game plan dependent. If there's a time where we feel like each one of those guys has a little something in a different alignment that can help us, then we're going to do it. And if we did it last week, may not necessarily mean we're going to do that this week or 3 weeks from now. And, we have a little more versatility, I think, in what we do. And you need it. In this day and age of college football, every week presents some different challenges. Probably if you look 25 years ago, the game was mainly with either 2 backs or 1 back with 2 tight ends, where now it's not. And 25 years ago, probably 90% of the snaps in college football were up underneath center. And we have to be able to adapt. And that puts an awful lot on our coaches. And yet what we want to make sure is just when it comes to the instruction with the players, it's got to be clear as clear gets. So there's nothing tentative in terms of the way that they operate.
And how important is it going to be to generate a pass rush that gets driven and disrupts their time?
Yeah, that has not happened very often. They're very good up front, and he knows, absolutely understands the protection they're in, and where if a ball's got to come out soon, he knows how much time he has to be able to make a certain throw, and does it quite well. There's not much that gets close to him, pressure-wise. There's just not, and that's because there are 2 functions. Again, because of the quality of job they do up front and with their backs, or once in a while using a 7-man, not that often, and then him getting the ball out of his hand.
Any updates since last night on Ronald Cleveland?
No, sir.
Yeah, we already addressed sort of the growing rivalry with Boise State?
What's that?
If we can address the sort of growing rivalry with Boise State, and if that's getting them even more pumped up for the weekend?
Yeah, you said we addressed that. You're saying I addressed it?
That before I got in here,
Oh,
so I apologize if you have to go.
no, I hadn't. Yet I, again, I mean, any vocabulary that someone wants to describe a contest, golly, I mean, there's one of those amendments where certainly we can. We have great respect for their program. They play hard. Our guys play hard, and I think just the class and the mutual respect too that's a part of it. So I don't, now, golly, doesn't mean somebody can't take two sticks and rub them together and pour kerosene on it and hope that it starts sparks, and hopefully if they, in the commercial part of journalism, if somebody feels like I can get something out of this, I got to. That's completely allowed, and we understand that. Our players, and I think our cadets do too. I mean, they know that possibility exists. It's just that's not something that crosses our mind or even our hearts either.
Anybody else here? John? Hey, Troy Garnhart from Air Force, fire away.
All right, well, Coach, from a national perspective, or for somebody who doesn't really cover your team that much, when you think about Air Force football, you think about your run offense, but for your run defense has been pretty stout as well this year too. And I talked to a couple of defensive players yesterday, and they were saying they were fine, being under the radar like that. But as a coach, you kind of hope that sometimes they get more recognition.
Callie, I hope when you go serve, there's an old adage that a military general said once: there's no limit to the good you can do when you don't care who gets the credit. And I think that applies certainly when you're a part of the Air Force and the Air Force Academy also. Now, I think within our team, we're going to recognize fine performances. And yet, I think more than anything else, you want to play well and have some humility and have some class.
Well, just going up, talking to them about going up and practice against the scout team offense. Obviously, you guys probably don't run the same schemes with your scout offense every week, but playing against a team that does focus on the run on offense so much, how much better does it make them?
That's an interesting question. I think from the standpoint that you do learn to play against blocks, just physically, where your hands and your pads have to be in the right place. Now, a good number of like what we see this week offensively, and what we see a good number of weeks, our offense may do a little bit of that, but that's a real challenge for us, especially with the size of the bodies, just because you look so frequently we play somebody and they're 315, 320 pounds across their front, and a lot of times our guys might be around 260, 270 pounds.
Talk about the challenges. You touched on this a little bit of, going up against Boise State, a team that's, their offense is a little more pass-oriented than run-oriented. What type of challenges does that pose for you guys?
We kind of, he said it, she said it in here, and it's accurate. Just the number of, first of all, they're really, really good. And, and then specifically on the offensive side of it, they do have good balance because they do run the football well. This year maybe they throw it a little more, but they still run it well. And the experience of a quarterback that gets the ball out of his hand, that's accurate, with all kinds of weapons and targets. I mean, they're just I don't know if anybody in college football is deeper than they are in terms of the number of guys that they involve offensively. And we got it was a difficult dose, but we certainly got every bit of that last season when we played them. And you go through this year, you look, you just look 4 days ago, how much offense or how many points did they have in the first half? I mean, you go back to earlier in the year when they played, team from the I think, is it a Power 6? What the American Conference?
They played, yeah, UConn and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Connecticut game. I think, they were held, I think it was like 820 yards, which is pretty decent output. If the Red Sox score 21 runs tonight, that's pretty good output, in baseball. I think those kind of yards and those kind of points. They have a good squad, really good squad.